So Six Flags St. Louis opened in 1971 as the third of the original Six Flags parks, as Six Flags over Mid-America. And Stickers have much hope for this region to become like a major market to support the theme park, especially because Disney had considered the region, but it never quite came to fruition. And I think it's quite clear the park's history and all the rights that they eventually end up getting being pretty much lesser versions of what maybe Georgia and the Texas parks did get. As of this year, in 2026, Six Flags St. Louis was sold off to EPR Properties and is now under management of Enchanted Parks. And next season, the park will be renamed to Mid-America by Enchanted Parks, which is pretty much just paying homage to the original park name as Six Flags over Mid-America. However, I don't know if this really resonates much with the people that love the park, with a general audience, because it's been Six Flags St. Louis for so long. I know they got to drop the Six Flags thing at some point, but I don't know if is Mid-America by Enchanted Parks really the name? I don't know. I'm curious of what people think about that. If you know,
I think the current generation, like, you can't call something mid.
So true.
Like Gen Z is ruthless, so they think if it's not cool, it's mid. Like, that is.
I mean, I would say
such a drag.
Top either. Like, it's not like it's like amazing.
I love Six Flags St. Louis. I think it's better than mid. I mean, it's not.
I love
the
the
greatest
park,
in
but
the
it's
world.
not like Great America.
But, I'm looking at, I've never really thought about it this way before, but I'm looking on their roller coaster database page, right? And they've got 10 roller coasters. They've only retired like a tiny handful of coasters. They've got almost every roller coaster based attraction that they've ever built. Still, it's not like this is a revolving door.
Sticker's Good Adventure.
Yeah, like,
Speaking
to their
of which,
credit.
We are, today that we're recording this, it's actually kind of great timing because they just announced, and I just moved it away, Bakunawa, if that's how I pronounce it.
Yeah, if you're not looking at the name, it's like, it's gone.
I know, so I'm trying to memorize the name now, Bakunawa. I think it's a great name, and I'm obsessed with the serpent logo that has like the back, the airtime hill, and the tail is the spike. I think it's super clever. I love that it's a unique name. Like Alex mentioned to me in private just a few minutes ago before we started recording, it's nice to be like no longer dealing with the DC Comics editions. Like, I can't wait to see what name the Magic Mountain new coaster is going to be. I'm just looking forward to this era of like, the unique search engine optimized names coming through for the Legacy Six Flags parks too, kind of like the Legacy Cedar Fair parks have been doing for a while. So I'm looking forward to that coaster. That was a little off topic, but it's kind of cool.
But yeah, it's pithy. You got to bring it up. But yeah, I would just want to say, like, Six Flags St. Louis might be the butt of the joke for not having like the biggest lineup ever, but every time they build a coaster, like, it's usually a net increase in coasters for the park. Like, they're not a park that's constantly like a revolving door of coasters the way that like some parks are. Great Adventure, I think, is the best example, but there's other Six Flags parks too that like they never seem to go up in numbers. Or even like Kings Island, I think, is an example I want to use right now. I feel like every time they get a new coaster, they're kind of replacing something. And Six Flags St. Louis, to their credit, I mean, almost every coaster they've ever built has resulted in a net increase in coasters for the park, which I love that for them. There was one coaster, because we comp them as coasters, that they almost got, but they did not get. Six Flags Over Mid-America, as it was called at the time, was announced along with the other Six Flags parks at the time by Intamin to be receiving a first-generation freefall. But it never came. It was on their trade magazine as one of their clients, and they had like a little map of the United States of all of their clients, and it was at the time all of the Six Flags parks, the 2 Marriott's parks, and Cedar Point. And for whatever reason, Six Flags Over Mid-America's first-gen freefall just never happened. It never materialized. But I wanted to bring that up now at the beginning of the episode before I forget, because there's a lot to talk about at this park. I love it. I love this park.
And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to an episode of Coaster Kings. And today's episode is all about Six Flags St. Louis, or soon to be renamed Mid-America by Enchanted Parks. And we did this park as part of a larger road trip. This is actually the last park on the road trip that we did. So anything else that related to this road trip, we already released. So we went to Six Flags America for 2 days. They went to Lost Island, Adventureland, Worlds of Fun, Silver Dollar City, and then we finished our tour with Six Flags St. Louis, which we had been to Six Flags St. Louis in the past. However, we went during a very cold Fright Fest night in late October 2017. And it was really cold. It was like 32 Fahrenheit out. It was like it was close to freezing, if not below freezing. And so the boss couldn't operate. And I completely understand why, because riding the boss on this trip, but it was kind of humid and hot, and we had to wait for a certain amount of people on the train. I think 16 or 18 people on the train in order to dispatch. I understood why, because even then it was like crawling in parts where I was like, yeah, no shit. If it was like cold, it would have never made it through the track, because I was already kind of shocked by how close we got to stalling on that. There's one video I will post probably when we promote this podcast episode, where you can just kind of see at one point we were just really running out of gas. We were the first train out for the day with people with bare minimum. They were waiting for us. We were the last two riders that they needed to reach minimum to dispatch the train. And man, I couldn't believe it. I really thought we were going to make it over that one hill. So, I get why it was closed on my first visit, and I'm just glad that we came back and I finally got to ride it. We'll discuss my thoughts on that ride a little bit later in the episode. But that was one of the many reasons that we needed to go back, and we had to use our Six Flags pass, so we still could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this park. Like, every time I go, I guess part of me thinks that like one day I'll go and I'll be disappointed, but maybe my expectations are just where they need to be every time. Because every time I go, I'm just always pleasantly surprised. I love the shape of it. I love the size of it. I feel like everything, like nothing is like a crazy long walk except for like getting to the boss, like getting to the station for the boss from the queue. But at least they'll let you re-ride. If you want to ride again, you don't have to walk all the way down and back. They'll let you stay in the station.
Yeah, if there's no queue, they'll let you go back. Because the exit runs pretty much parallel to the entrance queue, I guess. So there's that one little gate by the station, because I will say the whole queue is like a whole trip, right? But then when you go to get to the station, you cross over it, and there's a little gate there that lines up with the exit, so they can just swing the gate open, right? Is that how that went? Because I'm pretty sure they can swing the gate open and we can.
It's not hard to just go up there and get your rides in and then exit, and then. So aside from that, I feel like the rest of the park has just like a very convenient layout. It's just a big web of midway. It's not like a loop or a series of loops. It is a big lattice work of midways all through the center of it. And
kind
most of the rides of substance
Texas.
Yeah. But then this one I think is better. It's like Six Flags Over Texas has a couple of midways in the middle. Not everything really connects. And I feel like St. Louis is really just like a big. There isn't even really midways. It's almost like one giant with like breaks for like planters and trees and buildings and stuff. But it's just like, it is a super, almost like the whole park is like one big plaza. There's a couple of smaller loops like on the sides and stuff. And then like along the top, there's the midway that used to be like the Chicago area. But other than, I just love that the park is just, everything's just right there. Like you're never really that far from anything.
Funny
and
that
so when you're there,
you see that really as you're really seeing that as like a positive aspect of the park. I always found it kind of strange. I felt like it was more midway than was needed, more blacktop than was needed, and there's a million ways to get somewhere. But I'm also thinking to myself, why is this paved? Why is that paved? Why is everything paved? Why can't I walk everywhere so easily?
And like over the years, they've dropped rides on the midway where like they felt like they just didn't need this like excess of midway space. And then it's hard to do like themed areas that way because like there's really no beginning or end to areas when you have so much midway where there's like 6 ways to get to everything. So like I remember we did the Ferris wheel and then I was like, oh, let's ride the mine train. And then you were like, oh, that's on the other side of the park. And I was like, but no, it's right there because it's all an illusion. Like nothing is really far from anything else because you can just go straight there. Like for better or for worse, there's just a direct shot to everything.
That's right. And besides Mr. Freeze, this park doesn't really have anything like major. It's in the middle of the park, so the park is actually kind of small. Like it's a really convenient park. I will say that. You have that one loop that's kind of like you said on top of the like above the train tracks. That is kind of like the furthest loop out. But then every single ride on the entire park that is even decently sized sits on the outside of the walkways. So it's the walking distance in this park is always going to be short. Despite maybe needing to do like a long queue to get to a ride station like the Boss, or maybe to get to the station of Mr. Freeze, it's kind of convoluted. But generally speaking, all the rides sit on the outside of the walkways. So yeah, the park's actual walking space is not even that big. It's like definitely like a smaller sized park, I'd say. It's just that all the big rides, which they've got a bunch of really big rides. I think people don't realize how big the Screaming Eagle and the Boss really are. Those are just sitting all on the outside of that. So that's a good point. But that's also why I find the web a little unnecessary. Like it could have been 2 loops. Like it's not big. The park isn't big enough to need this walkway.
They could fill in some of the middle of the park, I think, a little bit. Some of the stuff over by like Colossus. I mean, they used to have Excalibur, Rest Its Soul. That was a great ride. And they just plunked it right in the middle of the midway because they had room to just put something right there in the middle, and it was such a great like spectator expansion. They could use some more flat rides kind of in the middle of the park where all the midways kind of converge, because there's just so much midway and maybe not as much like to do to justify the midway. But
I will say that is a relatively easy fix, because I don't want to armchair imagineer yet. We haven't gotten to the party episode, but yeah, that is, I think, an easy fix. I feel like they could rip up some of the midways and replace them with gardens if they so wish, or maybe a little bit more theming, and it wouldn't hurt the park's walkability. As where over Texas, when they started ripping up walkways to put rides in, it has completely ruined the flow of the park. I think it would be very hard to ruin the flow of St. Louis, even if you did take out some midways. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
I'm looking at it like on Google Maps, and it's like a spider web. Like it's this beautiful lattice work of midways that like Six Flags Over Texas could never. Like Six Flags Over Texas is what happens if you took like a park with this level of accessibility and like gummed up half of these midways with nothing, or with like a ride, like putting the roller coaster, putting Runaway Mountain just like on top of where a midway used to be. To this day, I don't think it's too late, Six Flags.
Are you ready for a tour of the park?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited. I'm looking at my map now.
So this park tour is going to be mostly the way you find the rides in order. However, there's going to be almost like a figure eight situation going on. So bear with us. The park isn't very large, so it's all kind of flowing anyway. So we're going to start with Batman the Ride. Now, Batman the Ride here is a mirrored version of the Batman the Rides that we're used to, like the classic ones. There's a few mirrored versions. Funny enough, we just wrote the one at Laurent too. We're going to talk about that one in the next episode. Then there's the one at Fiesta, Texas. So those, I think, are the only 3 mirrored clouds. If I'm incorrect, you can correct me, babe. Yep. But Batman the Ride here, especially riding it shortly after the original in Chicago, which we had never ridden them close together, it could really tell the differences. We posted a video of them racing, pretty much, like a split screen. You could tell that the one here in St. Louis ran a lot faster. I personally don't like it as much as most of the other ones. It ranks pretty low for me, despite it running pretty well. But that mostly comes down to the fact that I find it to be underdressed. It is oceans of switchbacks on concrete pads, gravel, and a jet black track and supports, and then the only thematic aspect is maybe like the entrance sign, and then the station just kind of hovers over the plot, and like you can tell where the staircases are enclosed, and that's like the bare minimum theming for a Batman the Ride. This is probably the weakest themed one, I would say. What would you say?
Yeah, it's a little bit bare. I love that it's black, because they all used to be black. And in my mind, well, except for Magic Mountains, of course, which was the unique light gray. But in my mind, Batman the Ride as a 90s icon is black. And it's nice to see that there is still one intact. as a black coaster, and I hope they never change it. But yeah, there's not a lot going on under the coaster. Like everything that's physically underneath the coaster is just super bare. And when you're walking under the coaster, the first half of the queue is cute, and it's like the Gotham City Gardens kind of thing, which I also hope they don't get rid of.
1/10.
And then once you cross once you're on the other side of the tracks, it's supposed to feel urban. The theme is that like you go on the other side of the construction wall for Gotham City, and it's supposed to feel like the ghetto, and it's not. It's just empty. It's like it feels like a stockyard, like a train yard, because you've got the train ride that goes along by it. It's just not the theme. It doesn't match up with the story that the ride has always tried to tell. It's neither here nor there now, because Batman is about to go bye-bye. That whole theme aspect of the ride, I think, is not long for this world. I don't expect Enchanted Parks to keep up with any of that. It's probably unnecessary money as far as they're concerned, as far as like licensing these properties.
So
I think
don't know exactly.
Warner Brothers or Six Flags would do it, but maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe they won't.
Yeah, I don't exactly know
think?
what the story is with that, because I keep reading and hearing things that they're going to take over licensing, and that's for sure also a talk about Snoopy's Looney Tunes, and then of course what other Time Warner or Warner Brothers properties like DC Comics. But to be honest, like you kind of hinted at, it doesn't need to stay. And my biggest dream would be that they would just take this ride. It would take very little to retheme it, because it doesn't have much theming to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And it has so much overflow switchbacks. I mean, it was kind of hard to find where we were supposed to walk because it wasn't busy. The trains were being sent out half empty. So for us, we were just kind of like hoping we're walking through the right switchbacks at the right time, because there's way too many. This queue house is insane. You've got switchbacks all in front of the ride. Then you've got switchbacks all below the lift hill. And then you've got switchbacks all below the station. And the whole transfer track is a switchback house. I mean, they can house 5 hours of queue in this thing and still run 2 trains efficiently. I don't understand why it has this much queue. So if it's up to me, rip out all of the queue, build a new simplified queue, or leave whatever queue is left over when you rip out all the switchbacks, and just paint it something colorful. You name it something patriotic, mid-American, whatever, because it is in that Studio America area, and move on. Because I just, that for me, Batman, despite it riding really well, is one of the weaker links, because I find that Secret of St. Louis is surprising in beauty. It is so pretty. The landscaping, the hills, it's so lush. It's like a giant forest in the background. The photos we took with the camera from the Ferris wheel, I was like, man, it really is a gorgeous park. But then Batman is like, I know it's supposed to be kind of ugly because it's Gotham City, but like, it's just like really ugly. I'm over it.
Yeah. Yes.
Moving on to the next black coaster, it's going to be Ninja. And Ninja, despite being also jet black, but with white supports, it has a lot more nature surrounding it. And the ride goes over terrain that's green, and there's trees, and it's a much more pleasant ride to look at, despite also being quite dated.
Yeah. I love Ninja so much. I love this particular Ninja too. It's the weakest link of the 3 Ninjas, if you count Six Flags Over George's and of course the original at Magic Mountain. However, this ride is lovable and very cool, and has a very interesting history, and I hope it just continues to live on. I think it's really well built. This is a Vekoma roller coaster. It has a lot of Arrow influence. It was contracted by Arrow originally. This was the trip where really it was Sean that made me realize, looking at it, that like Vekoma really was in charge of a lot more of this attraction than I'd originally thought. Because in my mind, Arrow had designed this ride, and Vekoma went to Vancouver, Canada, where the ride was originally built, and installed it for Expo 86 in Vancouver. But really, when you look at it, everything is Vekoma. The supports are Vekoma. The track shaping is Vekoma. Right after the corkscrews, it does that little wave turn and then down into the helix. I didn't think about it until just this trip, but it's like Arrow was not doing that. They could not bend track so fluidly like that. This is what Vekoma was doing at the time with like Blue Hawk, for the other former Ninja, and Goudrix. Like they could do this with coasters to do smooth transitions, whereas like Aerodynamics was still doing stuff like Anaconda at King's Dominion, where like what they were able to do with their technology versus what Ninja does and was doing back in 1986, it's suddenly very clear. Even at the smallest details, like the shape of the supports for the vertical loop are a different kind of support style. They're very similar to, like, again, like Sean said, the first generation Vekoma SLCs, these like A-frame supports that meet just barely at the elbow, make a tiny little A shape. These are all quintessential little Vekoma design quirks that are present and are highlighting why this ride is still open, because it's so sturdy. And if Arrow had designed this thing with some of its wonky transitions and shaping and stuff, there's no guarantee that it would still be here. But because it's a Vekoma, for all intents and purposes, I mean, this thing's a tank. I think it runs great. If you put MK1212s on this thing, it would be a knockout. People would go nuts for this ride. So
it really is a tank, and like you kind of mentioned, you can sense the Vekoma influences a lot more now that you look closely at it. It reminds me a lot of that coaster in Guangzhou, the
crazy roller coaster.
Crazy roller coaster.
Roller coaster. Yeah.
The early TPR people have seen the video of it because it was like one of those really quirky products that was started by Arrow, finished by Vekoma, and Ninja in a way is just very, very much that, maybe a little bit less
They're
wonky,
sisters.
but yeah, but there's definitely moments where I think about that ride a lot. I find the Sidewinder to be particularly funny because
so true.
It just feels like the shaping of it's so weird. You can tell that it was maybe conceptualized by one, but then completed by the other. And I this is all speculation because I don't know what the design process was like. I don't know what the manufacturing process was like, but you can tell that the Lift Hills Arrow, the supports on the vertical loop and the Sidewinder are definitely Vekoma, and from the SLC era, the first
wild.
SLCs. It's just hilarious. And then the biggest shout out I need to give is the final helix. That's my favorite part of the ride. It's funny. It's such a random thing, but like it's smooth. First of all, it's like surprisingly smooth. You would think, Bayern curve, because it goes into, if you think about the Vekoma corkscrew, and then it does that thing where it goes into the superstructure, right? It kind of just follows the superstructure around to the final bend, and not like that was ever the smoothest part. But then on Ninja, when it goes into the superstructure and like does that banking and then the turn, it's all really smooth. It helps that it runs those big trains, but overall, I'm a big Ninja fan. We rode it, like 4 times? At least 4 times.
We rode it like 3 times at least because it's fun. Yeah. I love. And like you said, now it's got the big Arrow Looper trains, which we love. Their Boomerang also runs the big Arrow trains, which sadly was not open for us this time. But and we were looking forward to that because that's one of my favorite Boomerangs. That was the Six Flags Over Texas Boomerang.
And it's one of the prettiest too. Yeah, it's very pretty.
And it's got a great location, great color scheme. It's got a lot going for it. But yeah, Ninja is like one paint job away.
Because if I'm not mistaken, when they built the Boomerang or they relocated it, they modified the support structure because it's built in a hillside. So they modified the support structure, if I'm not mistaken, to fit it into Six Flags St. Louis. And then they reinforced all of the track, kind of like they did with a lot of the Boomerangs that are living on that have gotten like MK1212s and stuff. You can tell like the Sidewinder or Jolly Rancher and Hershey Park has it too, where they reinforce the track. Yeah. But they put a lot of work into Boomerang, which is also why I always find it kind of funny that even though it opened after the MK1212s were already a widely accepted train type, that they still just went with one of those, the big Arrow Looper trains, instead of just giving it a new train set. But I didn't mind it. When we rode it in 2017,
that wasn't in the budget.
I thought it ran well.
If you look at it on Google Maps, you can see how they like blew up part of the side of the mountain just to like fit the hardware, like the little maintenance box and stuff that the Boomerangs have. Like they did put a lot of money into getting this ride online over here. So hopefully, I would love to see MK1212s for both of these coasters. Even though I love the trains that they both currently have, it would be a great way to relaunch these rides and remarket them and reignite interest.
I also think that maybe the response to Boomerang was kind of like, oh, wow, it was a right rotation program. Why would Six Flags St. Louis get this? That's so cheap. But if you look at Six Flags St. Louis's history, it's got a couple of really cool creative rides, but it's mostly been production models. Besides the 2 big Woodies, it's always kind of been production model park, and it goes all the way back to having Jet Scream. Instead of getting a big custom Schwarzkopf looper like Texas and Georgia did, they got a production model that was already found all over the world. So it's kind of in Six Flags St. Louis's DNA to just get production models, because the park just never needed or never really quite could support major big coasters outside of maybe wooden coasters that are a little cheaper to manufacture. So I think Boomerang was actually quite a fun fit, and in a way I always kind of thought of it as like a new Jet Scream, even though it's different manufacturer. It's just, production model looper.
Totally.
It totally fits St. Louis in my opinion.
Well, it's a coaster. A coaster's a coaster. They used to have bumper cars here. And it's just nice when a park like adds, again, like I touched on in the beginning of the episode, the coaster lineup at this park always seems to go up. It never really goes down. Not since like the 80s. And then like they had an old kiddie coaster that they chucked in 2006 that they finally got a spiritual successor for in the form of Rookie Racer. And all the coasters are tanks. Like none of these coasters are coasters that feel like maintenance nightmares. They're not these kinds of rides that spend a lot of time, closed. Like it's not like there's going to be a cleaning house on this park now that management has taken over and they're going to start like hemorrhaging coasters. I think their lineup is solid, and the number is going to keep going up when they add their next coaster instead of replacing an existing coaster that's already here, because everything is kind of firing on all cylinders.
100%. And then we're going to talk about River King Mine Train. The history of this ride is fascinating. Let's start with that. Alex, you want to tell me a little bit more about the whole mine train setup they had?
So River King Mine Train was part of the opening roster for Six Flags St. Louis because of the success of the various aerodynamics rides that were being added to Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags Over Georgia. They really got out in front of it. The Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags Over Georgia, to an extent, were not actually that ride heavy when they opened. Six Flags St. Louis represents a real, like a metamorphosis, a transition taking place during the 60s toward more ride-focused entertainment and less on things like shows. So Six Flags Over Texas and Over Georgia both built mine trains. They both were added after the parks were designed. And then they also added miniature second mine trains, like secondary, like little kiddie coaster mine trains. Six Flags St. Louis, in anticipation of demand, just built 2 full-sized aero mine trains from the get out. They also built 2 aero log flumes because, like Six Flags Over Georgia and Six Flags Over Texas, which both had 2 log flumes, but they were added later, and the second one was added to the first one to meet with demand. St. Louis was like, well, we're going to just do 2, like right off the bat. One operating system, 1 plot of land, 2 log flumes. They built 4 aero car rides because, again, those were just so huge at the time. But yeah, all that to say, they were very ambitious and they had lofty expectations for their attendance, and they were eager to meet demand of these modern aerodynamics family thrill rides by having 2 aero mine trains. Because Six Flags St. Louis sits on a hillside, the mine trains sit on the hillside, and they're perpendicular to the slope. So you have one mine train, the left side mine train, the one that is still with us, is a terrain ride, and it's built into the earth, and there's parts of the hillside that are carved out to accommodate this ride. The mine train on the right side was on stilts because the slope would drop off out from under it. And there's a lot of infrastructure still intact from the other side of the mine train. In fact, the maintenance walk for the operating mine train is outside, and it has the outdoor transfer track areas. Both of these transfers for the mine trains used to be enclosed, and the transfer space area for the mine train that has been removed is still there, and it's still enclosed, and they use it for Fright Fest.
In fact, there's still a section of queue that's really old. Mm-hmm. You can tell used to go up to a station and now is used for Fright Fest. I do like when parks use old infrastructure like that, but please continue.
It feels so natural. It's a good point. They have this cute little water feature there, and it doesn't feel like, I don't know. It fits nicely. I'm glad that they didn't demolish it or anything, and that they're still using it, getting some return on investment for some of this infrastructure. Anyway, so as the 80s went on, the demand for a mine train kind of evens out. Parks with aero mine trains, there's a lot, They're not necessarily the most popular rides in the park. Eventually, Six Flags St. Louis determines that having 2 mine trains is not necessary. So they take one of the mine trains and retheme it or reskin it. This is one of the first early examples of taking a roller coaster and turning it into something brand new and relaunching it and marketing it as another attraction. They turn it into Railblazer. So you have one side that is River King Mine Train and one side that is Railblazer. And Railblazer's gimmick is that it has stand-up trains. Aerodynamics dabbled early on in stand-up coaster train technology at around the same time that Togo in Japan was developing their stand-up coaster trains, and stand-up roller coasters all arrived stateside in various forms in 1984. There was 3 that came about at right around the same time. River King Mine Trains reskin into Railblazer, Extreme Roller, the Aero Double Corkscrew at Worlds of Fun, which also got the exact same stand-up coaster modified trains that River King Mine Train got, and then finally King Cobra at Kings Island, which was the first intentional, dedicated stand-up coaster, and it was a much more successful foray into the concept than the Aero rides were. 1 month after River King Mine Train opened with the stand-up trains on the Railblazer side, a guest in the last row fell out somehow and died, and to this day, they're not exactly sure how it happened. She was riding by herself in the back. Nobody saw her. In fact, it wasn't even obvious when the train came back. Nobody knew that there was somebody there because she was riding by herself. So it took a while
tragic. Oh my God.
until the park realized that something had happened. And then once they realized, the ride closed for the rest of the year, and then in 1985 returned to River King Mine Train and restored the mine car vehicles. However, the other side of the mine train side that did not get reskinned, the one that's on stilts and not built into the ground, again, demand for this ride just kept dwindling, and they were back to having 2 mine trains. In fact, I think the stilt one, the one that was eventually sold, I think it stopped operating for a couple years after the Railblazer incident. I don't know if the other side of the mine train actually reopened after 1985 because they were still in the same boat of we don't need to spend the operating costs on 2 mine trains. And since this Railblazer thing obviously didn't pan out, we're not going to just have 2 mine trains anymore. So as far as I know, for 86, 87, the other mine train, the one that's on stilts, was stationary. And then they ultimately sold it to Dollywood. And in doing so, this is a little known fact that I discovered from doing personal research. It's not recorded on Roller Coaster Database or anything. But when Dollywood purchased the other River King Mine Train in 1988, they expanded it. They added to the second half, the post-second lift section of the ride, because you can still ride this ride. It's at Magic Springs in Crystal Falls near Little Rock, Arkansas. It's called Big Bad John. This is a testament to Aero coasters, these old Aero mine trains, because this ride is still kicking. And it's longer than the one that's still at Six Flags St. Louis. And the shape of it just didn't feel like it worked with the way Six Flags St. Louis was designed. So I went back and found old pictures of the park when it was being built. Lo and behold, it was a smaller ride. Dollywood added 500 feet to it, not just to increase the ride length, but also to do more with the plot that they had to work with when they were moving it to their park. There was, even though it was a pre-existing ride that had, there's a lot of cost efficiency in purchasing an existing ride. They had to do a lot of prep work around the ride to make it fit in their park, in their plot. And one of those, they were already spending the money blowing up sides of the rock and stuff so that it would fit. They're like, well, we might as well expand it and make it a slightly longer ride. And like I said, Dollywood sold that ride in 1997. They replaced it with Tennessee Tornado, one of Aero's finest and final attractions, and it reuses the station and maintenance bay that was built for Dollywood to accommodate the River King Mine Train. So next time you're at Dollywood and you're riding Tennessee Tornado and you drop out of the station and make that little left turn, you go through the maintenance barn and then that little right turn toward the lift hill, that is following the exact same little pre-lift sequence as the St. Louis Mine Train. that they once operated. And again, if you're ever finding yourself in Little Rock, Arkansas, you can ride this other half of the mine train at Magic Springs and Crystal Falls. All that to say, the existing mine train, the more terrain-based one, is a beautiful ride with great landscaping. It's a super cute ride. It's not super long. It's not maybe like the best mine train in the world, but it's a lot of fun. And 1989, when Ninja opened, it was the physical successor to the other side of the River King mine train that it physically replaced, but it was also the spiritual successor to Jetstream, the Schwarzkopf looping star, which also retired at the end of 1988 and was sent to Astroworld. It was the one time in Six Flags St. Louis's history where their roller coaster lineup didn't really go up from adding a new coaster, because they technically lost 2 coasters and put in 1. But since then, all major coasters at Six Flags St. Louis have represented an increase in net roller coaster attractions. And
so
it's funny. Go ahead.
So I will say that I like the layout of this mine train a lot. I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of wonky, just how kind of what you're looking for in an old mine train. I just wish that they did a little bit more, or would pay a little more homage to maybe its classicness, because the station is incredibly basic, and you can tell that it's a station that used to have another station on the other side, like a track. And I feel like the color scheme, it's another black coaster in that corner of the park. I kind of wish they would maybe do like a complete refurb on it and make it brown, and maybe add some more wooden theming, more wooden scenery, almost like Six Flags Over Texas mine train, because they feel kind of similar to me. Of course, Over Texas is even smaller and has less height to it, but I just wish that maybe it would just did a little bit more in the polish or in the theming department. To me, it just feels like it doesn't get enough appreciation.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there by Enchanted Parks to kind of spruce it up a little bit and pay respects to the fact that it used to be a dueling coaster. There's a lot of history there. This is one of those rides, one of those opening year attractions that reflects local history of Missouri, and it would be nice to see some of that more explicitly referenced. But as it is as a 55-year-old era mine train in 2026. It's a great ride. And I'm just glad that it's still there. And I'm just glad that the landscaping is still so nice. I mean, you can't even really hardly see it from like a satellite image because it's so covered up in trees. And like, that's the beauty of a ride like this, is you build it when like everything is brand new and the trees are just being planted. And then like 55 years later, you have this mature forest of trees surrounding your coaster. It's a great ride.
And then next on the list, if you're ready to move on,
yes,
is Screaming Eagle. Now, Screaming Eagle, I will start with saying that it is a very underrated wooden coaster. It is so much larger than meets the eye. I think people, of course, the Boss is so massive that when you think of wooden coasters in Missouri, or think of a wooden coaster at that park, you're going to think, oh, the Boss. No, the Boss is the big boy. And it is. It is the big boy. But Screaming Eagle is the original big boy. That thing is quite massive. Uses its terrain to its advantage so nicely that the ride just keeps on going for a very long time and has incredible pacing. It travels a long distance, and the first drop is very impressive. Now, I remember being an absolute fan the first time we rode it a couple of years ago, at this point like 9 years ago, and I will say this time around it did feel like it ran a little bit poorly in the back and in the second row of a car, like on the wheel seat. And the front row was a blast. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. I still remember being so excited how good a front row ride was that I insisted on riding in second row, and I ate my words so hard because I came to the station thinking my head hurt so bad. Why did I ride again?
We learned a very important lesson about wheel seats on PTC.
For real though, it's just wild how the same car of the same train can be such a different experience depending on front or back. So I will forfeit my foot room on these PTCs to have a front car or a front row of a car going forward, because this was like the most obvious lesson that was learned. But I really enjoyed the amazing landscaping, the way that it goes through the forest. It has a classic layout, but man, everything it does so with a great pacing. I'm a big fan of this ride. And I just don't think enough people talk about it. Or maybe I'm just not in the right circles, but I don't really think that the Screaming Eagle comes up that often in conversation these days.
I love Screaming Eagle. I mean, it is just a beautiful, beautiful ride. It was John Allen's magnum opus. He described it as such himself, and then he passed away that same year toward the end of 1976 after designing the ride. Like he built his masterpiece, retired, and passed away all in the same year. And it's just a ride that is so magnificent and such an incredible use of the natural terrain that you could never just choose to build another one. Like you can't just decide to build a ride like the Screaming Eagle. You have to get lucky with your landscape and the topography. And it's just I just love Six Flags St. Louis and their collection of 3 wooden coasters offering 3 completely different ride experiences. And when you're looking for like the classic, like mid-century revival of the wooden coaster, Six Flags St. Louis pretty much has the one, like the king of the regional park Renaissance wooden coaster fascination. Like this is it. It's the one. Like even on a bad day, I could never resist another ride, even in a bad seat. Our wheel seat experience, I know you were, it was brutal for you, but I still was like, I could ride that again. Like that was punishing, but I just like it so much. I'm like, I can't be mad. Like I can't. And it's gotten some upgrade. They redid that whole midway section up there. When they added the Catwoman whip, giant booster ride. When they demolished the Intamin second gen freefall, the Superman themed freefall that was up there, they took the opportunity to kind of redevelop the whole plaza for Screaming Eagle, and it looks a lot better. It used to be kind of convoluted. There was a lot of midway games up there that were kind of decaying. It was one area of the park that felt a little awkward for like approaching, especially since you're approaching like the signature coaster of the park. It felt like it was a little weird. They redid it and it looks a lot better now. So it's nice like that the ride got a little curb appeal boost. I look forward to seeing how Enchanted Parks has acquired a lot of wood.
Well, didn't they announce that they were going to like I forgot the number, but like heavily invest in retracking all the woodies in the chain? And it was like one of those things that they announced during one of those kind of like PR calls, social media things.
I think I heard something about that.
I forgot what it was. It was right after we went to St. Louis. We talked about it. Yeah.
A lot of their parks are wooden coasters centric. Not just a park that like has a wooden coaster, but like 3 of their parks have 3 wooden coasters each. Six Flags St. Louis, Worlds of Fun, Michigan's Adventure has 4. So
more, yeah.
They have to really, like, if they weren't in the business of running and maintaining wooden coasters, they are now.
And it's funny because these aren't just like
2.
These aren't just small woodies either. I mean, we're talking about stuff like Screaming Eagle,
these are
the
huge.
Boss, Shivering Timbers,
iconic rides. Shivering Timbers.
These are massive coasters. It takes
the 2 largest roller coasters that Custom Coasters International ever built are
by
under this one umbrella. By a huge margin. Massive. Yeah. Like wooden hypercoasters. And with Great Escape, they've got 2 wooden coasters now too. So on average, every park in their chain has 3 wooden coasters, like on average. So they are 2.5 maybe. Either way, I expect them to rise to the occasion, because if there's one thing that they're going to be doing now, it is running wooden coasters. Wooden coasters are going to be a huge part of their identity, and it is up to them to rise to that occasion and make people fall in love with their wooden coasters, which I don't think is that hard to do. You just have to put the money in it. The money just has to be there. It's not complicated. It's just not cheap. So they've got their work cut out for them. We'll see how it goes.
And then next up, and not too far from there, is Pandemonium, which was closed during our visit. We rode it last time. And this one, I will say, is by far the prettiest one, because it is sitting in this really nice tree-covered area. It is not that exposed to the sun. I almost feel like it is actually tree-covered because the trees are so mature around it. As well, I'm so used to the Fiesta Texas and the Over Texas one being so exposed. And same for kind of the New England one being kind of surrounded by concrete on all sides. This is really one of the nicer ones. So I really, I enjoyed walking around it and kind of seeing again how it was kind of like a terrain adapted version as well, where even though it's a clone, they worked the land to fit it in. You have that walkway that goes underneath what used to be like the big skating ramp section of the Tony Hawk's Big Spin, when it was still called that. So you can kind of walk under the ride. It has a nice presence to it, which also makes the theme kind of clashy, because they just, renamed it Pandemonium, but that whole like skater theme is kind of still a thing. So it's another one of those like blank canvases where all they have to do is repaint it, and it could be anything. It could be themed to the woods. It could be kind of like a la Camp Snoopy kind of vibes, if they really wish.
Yeah, Timberland Twister kind of thing.
Yeah, which was such a clever name, by the way. And then Rookie Racer was the new Vekoma Kiddie coaster that was a rip from another project, or did they actually order it for the park? Do you remember?
No, that was left over. That was either something in the Middle East that they were doing, or the Zhejiang province Six Flags project. It was one of those two, I think. I think this came from the same project that like the Flash at Six Flags Great Adventure and the Aquaman, the Mac Power Splash. I think this all came from the same park plan, but for a ride that was not intended for this park, which, I mean, this is Six Flags St. Louis's legacy. Every coaster here, except for the wooden coasters, it's like, if it's a steel coaster, it either was brought here secondhand or it was a clone of a ride designed for another park. And somehow they make it really fit. Like Pandemonium, which fits so nicely, you would never think like, oh, this was an off-the-shelf coaster that was not designed for this park, because the park does such a great job of making these rides their own. Just like Ninja, just like Batman, like they do such a nice job of fitting these rides in. So, Rookie Racer is no different. They used to have a go-kart track here. It's such a nice replacement for go-karts. Again, we're going up. Numbers going up. It's a new coaster. It did not replace a coaster. It replaced an upcharge, glorified family entertainment center attraction, and like, it's a great move. This corner that has Rookie Racer and also two of the park's other newest rides, a Zamperla Giant Discovery and a Zamperla Endeavor. Great little trio of newer rides, of modern, newer investment for the area. Right now, the flat rides are themed to DC characters, obviously, but there's not really much theming, and so that'll be an easy fix for. And
I must say,
for new management
first of all, yes, the corner is full of kinetic energy. I mean, they do that fog thing where when the Joker, a Circus of Chaos, is that what it's called? Joker,
yeah, Carnival of Chaos.
Carnival of Chaos. When it swings, it drags like the fog around. I think that's such a easy particle effect, cool thing.
So smart.
And then you've got, of course, the Supergirl flat ride right in front of it. But then Rookie Racer is just a nice fit. It fits right between the boss and those two flat rides. It's colorful. I thought the layout was surprisingly good, because you have that pretty large first drop, and then you've got those kind of like double helix situation going on, then a little S track back to the station.
But because
the drop
coaster.
because the drop is so large, the pacing is great. Like, you kind of fly through that layout, and they do a little off-board audio, and they have a whole kind of story going on. They actually put in some effort that I appreciate. There's like these like live interviews going on from the racetracks while you're waiting to go to the station. I thought overall it was actually a pretty fun fit. Of course, it feels kind of out of place between the boss and the superhero theme, but nothing that I really say is a negative aspect to it. I think one of the funniest things that I remember is that when you get to the queue, the queue starts right after the train track, so there's a train coming by. You can't exit or enter the queue for Rookie Racer. Now that was a thing for the boss too. So for the boss, they built that super steep little staircase situation over the railroad, so people can enter the queue at any time, despite there being a train running over. But then if you exit
railroad
the boss,
crossings,
you have to wait for a train to pass by. It's hilarious. Yeah,
it's a quintessential experience. There is I haven't counted, but I think there's over a dozen midway rail crossings at this park, because of the way that the train is shaped. It's got like a kind of a macaroni noodle sort of shape to it, and it's just right in the center of the park. So
Hot tub
on the
macaroni noodle.
on the lower parts of the park, like toward the entrance, you're constantly passing under the train. There's like 4 major bridges that you pass under for the 2 kind of loops at the front of the park, and then toward the back of the park, when it's flush with the terrain, you have a lot of little railroad crossings between rides. In fact, Rookie Racer just barely goes right over the train tracks just for a second. They didn't have to do that. I feel like they could have fit the ride in the plot between the train tracks and Boss's Queue. But I feel like they did a train crossing where it goes over the train tracks just for fun. Like just on the off chance that the train is going by when the coaster's going through, just to get a little interaction there. So I love that. They took, it's classic St. Louis. They took something that they got because that was what was in the budget, and they made it the best that they could. And yeah, the racing theme is a little odd, but it pays homage to the go-kart track that was there, which, you know, I'm not a go-kart person, but it was there for like over 30 years. Local people probably had, I'm sure there was a fan base for this go-kart. It was a nice track for what it was. It was a better go-kart track than like maybe your typical go-kart track. So I'm sure people liked it. And so it's a little love note to the go-kart track by keeping the racing theme.
Good point. And then let's talk about let's move to the Ferris wheel first. Let's talk about Colossus. So Colossus is the center of the park, massive Ferris wheel. I enjoy big Ferris. I just enjoy Ferris wheels in general. It's one of my favorite things about Asia is that like the Ferris wheel lives on so gloriously in all these Asian countries where there's just random Ferris wheels at city parks and just there for observational purposes. And that's such a fun aspect of traveling through China, for example, is the amount of Ferris wheels we get to ride. And so in North America, I feel like it's kind of rare that you have a big Ferris wheel at a major amusement park. There's the one at Cedar Point that's always fun to ride. Then you've got, of course, here the one we're going to talk about right now. It's like St. Louis. And maybe I'm just kind of tired, but like I can't think of that many in North America. That's like, there's La Ronde has a good one. We did that one just the other day.
And you know what these all have in common?
Vekoma, right?
They're all Vekoma. Or Schwarzkopf. Cedar Point's, I think, is the Schwarzkopf. But like this one is actually not even Vekoma. It's another little Dutch company that like did a one-off. This is a totally unique Ferris wheel. It's the only one like it. But then like you'll find Vekoma Ferris wheels. There's one at Maury's Piers. There's one at Kentucky Kingdom. Like Vekoma, the Ferris wheel, the large Ferris wheel is really a Vekoma legacy, but also a Schwarzkopf legacy. You'll find the big Ferris wheel at Great Adventure is Vekoma or is a Schwarzkopf.
I guess it's more than I thought of. Yeah. And Walibi Belgium has a big Vekoma one, which will be right.
Mm-hmm.
Walibi Holland, sorry. Walibi Belgium was sold to a Toxic Park in Rotterdam, but I don't know if it's going to open.
Darien Lake and Riverside and Agawam both used to have big Vekoma Ferris wheels. Sadly, they're gone now. But yeah, we love a big Ferris wheel, especially this. This is a particularly nice one.
The only downside I thought of this one is that the first one, I will say the upside is the vehicles are massive. I mean, you could have a private party of 10 people in there and have a good time. But the downside
it holds
is that
320 people.
Yeah, I mean, the capacity thing is massive, but the downside is that the metal bars that are lining the outsides of the vehicle to prevent people from throwing stuff or falling or doing whatever, there's so many of them that it's kind of hard to enjoy the view almost, especially when I take like videos or photos. Like we had a camera with us because it's like awesome to take photos of parks like this from observation areas like a Ferris wheel because you just get really nice angles from above the rides. And Mr. Freeze is right next to you, and it's one of those things where it's like, man, Mr. Freeze from above is a whole different game. But then you couldn't really enjoy taking photos or videos that much because I found it very difficult to even look through the bars, let alone point a camera
made it work,
through
though.
it.
You did a great job. You rose to the occasion.
We rode
there
twice in order to get those photos. Yeah,
worth
it.
But
so
it is
I'll
nice.
post some of those photos
You just
on the
go
website.
around.
Yeah.
It's so big, and it is a slow wheel, and you just go around once. It's like Asia style Ferris wheel loading.
Yeah.
So you pass through, and they'll let you ride again if it's not busy. This Ferris wheel, if I'm not mistaken,
we rode 3 times because we walked around and then we rode twice, I think, without getting off. Is that what we did?
That's
so
possible.
3 times total.
And it's just a nice. We were so relaxed. We'd ridden everything. Like the pressure was off. So like, and it's got to be one of the nicest views from any Ferris wheel in the world, theme park wise. Bars notwithstanding.
That's when
But
I
I love
really
this, like-
appreciated the natural landscape that Secret St. Louis sits in, because last time we went was like in kind of wintry conditions, and so there was the leaves on the trees. It was kind of bare. It was cold. It was very, very chilly and gray. So for me, my whole image of Secret St. Louis was just like being cold and it being like gray weather. But then this time it was like lush summer. It almost kind of gave me Ozarks vibes. Like, man, like there's really nice tree foliage here, the nature, the hillside. I really, I just really enjoyed the rides on the Ferris wheel. It's funny how that stuck out to me so much. It's true.
It's a highlight for me because there aren't a lot of Six Flags parks with big Ferris wheels. And then also this one, it's very historic. This one, like many of Worlds of Fun, or what Worlds of Fun, like many of Six Flags St. Louis's rides, it was purchased secondhand. This Ferris wheel was built for the 1984 World's Fair in New Orleans. If I'm not mistaken, it was the largest Ferris wheel in the world when it was built. And that was during the Bally's era of Six Flags parks, like that mid 80s, era where they were doing a lot of the ride rotation programs stuff. Six Flags was also incredibly frugal, and World's Fairs and World Expos and stuff like Expo 86 in Vancouver and the World's Fair in New Orleans. These were opportunities for regional parks to get very new rides that were only going to be running for maybe a couple months tops, at their respective locations before being sold permanently. And so like this was Six Flags acquired many rides from the 1984 World's Fair in New Orleans, including this Ferris wheel. They purchased the prototype aerodynamics Shoot the Chute ride that reopened at Astroworld. The prototype Husk Condor was unveiled at the 1984 World's Fair. I believe one of the condors that would make its way around the Six Flags parks during the ride rotation program was in fact that condor from the World's Fair, although I can't confirm that. It's just a theory of mine. But yeah, this Ferris wheel was added. It opened in 1986. I have another theory that, remember how I said at the beginning of this episode that they were supposed to get an intimate first generation free fall, and then that plan fell through for whatever reason? My theory is that Colossus sat on the plot where they had originally planned to build the free fall, because it's this nice long skinny plot where they could build a tall ride. It's very central to the park. It would have had a great curb appeal, great visual drama. Used to be a petting zoo.
Ferris wheel, Colossus is so much bigger though. Like the scope, the size. Like you can see Colossus from the freeway, as where it would have been hard to, without staring at the park for a long time, to really appreciate like a first gen free fall in that spot. Don't you think?
Yeah.
They're not that big.
At the time, it would have made sense. And again, this is just pure speculation on my part because of the timing. The free fall for Mid America would have opened in like 1984. Colossus opened 2 years later. My theory was just that was a part of the park that they were ready to redevelop. And then they, for whatever reason, passed over the free fall project and then had this Ferris wheel. And they thought, oh, well, we have a plot of land, a great location for it that's like nice and skinny and prominent. And like, we'll put the wheel there. But yeah, I love Colossus. It's a must ride at Six Flags St. Louis for us.
And then next up, another must ride, which we didn't get to ride last time either because it was so cold, is the Log Flume. And I will say, before I forget to mention it, I was thinking about it, but I didn't write it down. Big shout out to the park for running both sides. It wasn't that busy. Both sides were running. It was kind of totally a vibe. Am I mistaken? No, both sides were running, right? Am I going crazy?
I don't think both sides were open for us, but
oh shit,
they do
am I
run.
Crazy then?
They run both.
Oh,
we were there on
maybe there was like logs
quiet
in the
day.
other one or something.
It was super quiet. Like, the day that you guys, when we were there, it was like the best day ever. Like the park was so dead. But they do routinely run both sides
for them
on like weekends and busy days and peak summer. It wasn't quite peak summer when we went, and it was a weekday.
Yeah,
it was what was it? Like it was like the Tuesday. It was like the Wednesday after Memorial Day. Like it was.
Yeah, it was
dead.
It was one of those things where like their schedule, I think, was just gone to weekly, or like like daily.
Yeah, they were just. It was like the first Wednesday of the year. So they only had the one side for us that time. However, they do run both sides frequently because it's all the same basic infrastructure. So I don't think it costs them a whole lot
In that
more
case,
operating cost-wise to do the second one.
I stand corrected then. Yeah, my bad.
But
I
they
started
had,
running both.
they're just, it's so great. I love these rides. It's very simple. There's not a ton of landscaping around the ride because there used to be more trees around these flumes, but because of the erosion from water spill off from the flume from like decades of operation, they've cut down. They cut down the trees periodically just so that they don't slump over and fall into the track, especially after the Ninja incident. I think that was when, because I know Six Flags Over Georgia cut down all of Mindbender's trees right after the Ninja incident of 2014 at Magic Mountain. And I'm pretty sure that if there were still trees around the log flume at Six Flags St. Louis, there probably weren't anymore after that new company initiative to cut down older trees near water areas in the park that were a liability for slumping and falling into the ride path. So aside from not having a whole lot to look at, but you're there to look at the ride. The ride is a gem. It is just a classic aero flume. The two flumes together built as like one ride, like sharing a station. It invokes images of old World's Fairs, like the 64 World's Fair that had the original aerolog flumes that were two independent little flumes facing each other. That's what this ride reminds me of the most, because it was one of the only times that two aero flumes were built simultaneously together to operate as a pair. And because there's a whole World's Fair themed area at Six Flags St. Louis, and like Colossus is in it, which is from the World's Fair. Like it all, so Six Flags St. Louis is a very like World Expo, World's Fair-esque amusement park. And then of course St. Louis as a city, which was hosted the 1904 World's Fair, perhaps the most famous, and then also the World's Fair, I believe in 1969, which gave them the incredible Gateway to the West St. Louis Arch. Like this is a World's Fair city. They could theme this whole park to the World's Fair if they wanted to. Enchanted Parks.
If you're listening,
this is free. This is free consulting. You could take this whole park and make it just a World's Fair themed amusement park. Take the Entrance Plaza theme from the 1904 World's Fair and just blow it up. Take the Hollywood movie area part of the park and make it like a mid-century World's Fair. And you can do the New York World's Fair on the side of the park that has the log flumes. Like, come on, it's right there. Make it the whole World's Fair.
This is another one of those parks that you can like armchair Imagineer to death. You know, there's so much potential. I don't know.
So much potential.
See an episode about that this season because I still want to do a Cigarettes Great America armchair Imagineering episode because my passion for the Great America Parks lies significantly higher than Six Flags St. Louis, but there's still lots to talk about.
Me too.
I'm just being honest. Like I love Cigarettes St. Louis, but if there's like a passion that I have for like a pre-existing brand and possibilities, I find that Cigarettes Great America is like
it's the Marriott Parks.
It's like prime. It's got that attendance. It's got that revenue. It's got that possibility. It's where Six Flags St. Louis. I'm happy that it is where it's at. But I'm not gonna be like, oh wow, any company is gonna. I don't know. I just feel like the potential's there, but is it realistic to expect that kind of capital investments in a park like that? I think
Six Flags St. Louis is kind of achieving its potential. Like it's a really nice park, and I feel like it's exactly where it needs to be in a lot of ways. So it's not inviting a whole lot of for me, a good park that's like prime for armchair Imagineering is the kind of park that like is maybe like halfway there. Like there's a lot of good, but there's a lot of change that could and should be happening. And I don't feel like Six Flags St. Louis needs, I mean, it could always use a new coaster. There's some rides that need new paint. There's a couple of vacancies left by flat rides. Really just one, just Excalibur. It's like the one obvious place where it's like, okay, put a flat ride here. The park is like one coaster, one flat ride, and some rethemes away from being like really operating at a great
big
place.
Thing about like Imagineering or armchair Imagineering a park is that I like for a park to have a possibility of like themed realms. That's where I find that a little bit difficult to imagine Cigarettes St. Louis because everything is so close and everything is so close next to each other despite having very different dramatic thematic changes among them. As where at parks like Great America, there is like actual giant lands that could be cohesive and sub themes that I just find Cigarette St. Louis, like you kind of said, it doesn't need as much change, but also I have a hard time envisioning that park as a park that has very distinct neighborhoods. And I kind of see it more almost like, I don't want to quite draw a parallel with Silver Dollar City, but Cigarette St. Louis throughout the whole park kind of feels the same, as where it's kind of cohesively blacktop, cohesively black color paints, color schemes.
That's why I feel like they could do one overarching theme at that park and it would be really nice, just like how Silver Dollar City has one overarching theme. Anyway,
next up, we're going to talk about the underrated wooden coaster in the park, American Thunder. Now, American Thunder is a great GCI woody, a great Coasters Internationals woody. And it's overshadowed by other woodies at the park, for sure. I mean, obviously, Screaming Eagle and particularly the Boss are such massive rides that I'm always surprised that they ever went with a clone of a pre-existing woody at Power Park. I'm not sure why they didn't build a custom GCI woody. I think if any park could have done it, if any park would have been a great home to a custom terrain GCI woody, which generally speaking are almost all custom anyway, outside of now having the White Lightning clones that the Plopsa Parks are aggressively building, and then having this particular layout 3 times, one in China, one in the US, and one in Europe. If I'm not mistaken, it's just these 3. Either way, I'm still surprised that they did that they went with the clone, but it is a very, very good ride, and I do understand why it's cloned, because for its smaller size, it gets a lot done. It's a very fun, creative layout that really kind of has that personality of an early GCI, like Roar at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. I don't know why I draw the parallel, but to me, I kind of felt similar in like the size of the elements, if that makes sense, even though the layout's very different. Don't mind me. It just had a similar feel to it. What do you think about this ride? I'm like rattling off my thoughts about this ride.
Yeah, I do. I love this ride. And I mean, the fact that it's a clone, I think it's kind of neither here nor there for me, because on the one hand, you're like, oh, GCI is probably capable of more. On the other hand, they built this ride for $7 million. It was a super cheap ride. And not cheap in the sense that like poor quality, but just like it was very inexpensive to build and a really nice addition for the park during a period of time where there was not a lot of money to work with. Six Flags was like super broke in 2008. And this was right before the global financial crash. So like they were doing well to have anything new. And Thunderbird's a great ride. I love this layout. So it was nice to see a second
American
one.
Thunder?
Well, no, Thunderbird's a great ride too. It's just that it's nice. It was nice that they did another one because it fits so nicely in the little crook of the train ride. They were like, okay, well, why not? I was looking at Mad Racers in China, which is the 3rd iteration. It's no longer listed as a clone or of the layout of these rides on Roller Coaster Database because apparently it's slightly taller, but it's also a little shorter. It's only 2,500 feet long, whereas American Thunder is 2,700 feet long. So it's not an exact clone, but it's close. Kind of like how Heidi is not actually an exact clone of White Lightning because White Lightning does like the little 90-degree bank portion that wasn't really necessary. They just did it for clout. But yeah, American Thunder is a cool ride for Six Flags St. Louis as a park that wants to offer lots of different kinds of wooden coaster experiences. Is it as good as the other 2? No. But it is different. And it is so different from the Boss and Screaming Eagle. And it's also gentler. It's smoother. It's the easiest to maintain. And I think it's probably the most popular among like families and stuff because the other 2 are much more punishing in terms of like their scale and scope. And then also with whatever condition that they might be running in, like with the Boss having a lot of jackhammering at the bottom of the second drop right now, whereas that's not something you really have to worry about on American Thunder. So a great ride. I feel like it's a great Six Flags St. Louis experience. I love how it sits right just to the left of the entrance. You have Batman and American Thunder flanking the park on either side. That's a really nice approach to it. And this was another coaster that they added that they didn't have to remove any rides. They positioned it on top of what was a majority of their Aero car ride, which they shortened the Aero car ride substantially to accommodate the ride, but it was still open and it ran. The car ride ran up until 2021 and was probably just closed post-COVID due to operating cost-cutting measures, but it wasn't because the coaster was added. So this was another great example of the park adding a coaster. Not only did they not lose another coaster to add it, but they didn't even lose any rides. They just replaced part of an existing ride that stayed open. So I think it was a great addition for the park.
And I think it's time to talk about the big boy, the boss, the massive wooden coaster.
Boss.
My first note I wrote in the show notes was wow, because it was just wow. For so many
true,
reasons,
bestie.
it was wow. Very wow, very boss, very big. Now, I must address that I guess I'll go in order of my little notes that I made for myself to stay on track.
Yeah, go for it.
I love the queue because it's so highly unique to take kind of like a wooden boardwalk queue into the hills to go to the station. It's kind of looming over the park. The boss has almost this kind of medieval theme that we're going for with a drawbridge, with like a drawbridge. And then the station is up in the hill. You can kind of see it from a lot of places in the park. You can see the boss's station has a giant logo on it with those flames on it, almost Harley Davidson style. I don't know what we're going for, but I'm here for it. And so to walk your way up, you kind of use this like boardwalky switchbacky thing that kind of makes its way up into the hills, and then there's like a big straight section, and most of this is mirrored by the exit, because the exit, what goes up must come down. You have to come back to the park. And along the way, you can now see where there used to be the final helix that was then taken out. And so you can really tell that there is that superstructures there are kind of slowly growing in, vines growing over it, vegetation's growing higher. I thought it was kind of neat. And then you get eventually to the station, and it's kind of a production. Like Alex said earlier in the episode, you can kind of loop around and ride again when you exit by going up the stairs again and riding again. So that's kind of neat, because if you had to go walk around every time, I don't think a rider should be nearly as high. Now, the ride itself ran all right. I found that the first section from like the top of the lift until the end of the Titan track, so you have your big drop, and then you have that like secondary drop in the structure, and you have a really big bank turn that leads into the second high element. Now, that's all great because they use Titan Track for some of that. And Titan Track, like I said in the World of Fun episode, I think I'm kind of a fan because it really does make a difference. And it does make a ride so much smoother. And rides like the Boss that are acting like hypercoasters on wooden tracks, you're going to get to a point where I'd rather have that than have the highly uncomfortable second drop on this ride, where between the second drop and then the next turnaround into the mid-course brake run. Is it the mid-course? I believe that's the mid-course.
Yeah, that's where the mid-course is.
It is so brutal. It is so bad. It is like shattering. My knees were just like bouncing between the metal bars of the train. I mean, I was surprised my kneecaps weren't shot to hell and I was bleeding to death. It was so terrible. It was like incredible whiplash between the smoothness and the grandiosity of the first drop and then like rushing through the structure and the big turn. And I was like, oh my God, best ride ever. I'm riding the Boss. Yeah. And then you get to that second drop and I really want to cry. I was like, what the hell is happening? It is so bad. It's so painful. That was really, if they fixed that little section, the ride's in much better shape. Because after that, even though there's some rough spots, it's not as bad. Even though you can tell where, I think part of the reason that it tracks, part of the reason that it kind of runs so slow at some moments is because it must lose so much energy, in the rougher parts of the ride. It must just lose a lot of energy there. So yeah, I would not be against them doing more Titan Track in like the valleys. Doing Titan Track in the valleys would really suit them well. That's my biggest takeaway. Yeah. But overall, it is just a crazy scope. The ride's so big, it's so massive, it's sprawling, it's in the hills. It's one of those things like, who came up with this? Like why and how and thank you at the same time. Like, it's cool. I'm so glad it exists. Like, thanks for being crazy, whoever's behind this masterpiece. And I'm just glad I finally wrote it because it was kind of a bucket lister for a long time. And in 2017, I was kind of bummed we couldn't ride it, but at the same time, it's like, you roll with the punches. Like, I don't feel like close rides generally affect me that much. But it was just really
park
nice
you're going to go back to. It was like,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And it took us 10 years, but we did it, man. Like, and I love this park. It's really we really should have gone back sooner because it's such a lovable park.
And the ride's a total icon. I mean, it's a little sad that we only got to ride 3 times because it was so intense. I couldn't handle more than that. Yeah. We did the front row ride too, and I was like, you're just like, yeah, you're really fighting for your life in some parts of the layout, but at the same time, you can't help but just appreciate the scope and how intense and crazy it is. It's one of those rides that did we buy merch for it? I don't think we did, but I kind of wish we had bought the merch because I had the
They
pretty
did have a
decent
cool T-shirt, like a
shirt.
tattoo
Yeah.
style T-shirt that was kind of cool.
We should have bought that, honestly.
It's a fun ride, and I'm glad they're so proud of it because it's also the only roller coaster there that has a keychain, like a real official keychain of this ride name with the logo. I think I have it. I think I bought it last time. Because when I saw it, it looked familiar. I was like, there's no way I would have left this on the shelf in 2017. So I'm pretty sure I've got it in my collection somewhere. So I didn't buy it again this time. But I did get a pin. I got a Six Flags Over Mid-America opening year, like, themed pin. It was a cool thing to see at the gift shop.
And then last but not least, I think it's time to talk about Mr. Freeze. Now, I'm curious if Mr. Freeze is going to stay Mr. Freeze or if they're going to rename it, because it's kind of like a super iconic name of like Batman, whatever. Mr. Freeze is Mr. Freeze. And if you know Mr. Freeze, you know Mr. Freeze. I feel like all the locals, Texas and in St. Louis, everyone just knows Mr. Freeze. Like if I talk about to colleagues from Dallas, we talk about Mr. Freeze. Like Mr. Freeze is like an icon. And if there's one ride in the entire acquisition of Enchanted Parks where I'm like, man, don't fuck with the name, it's gonna be Mr. Freeze for me. Because I just find Mr. Freeze to be Mr. Freeze. So who knows? I guess I could just name it like Reverse Blast, cute Reverse Blast. But who's not gonna call it Mr. Freeze? Anyway, Mr. Freeze.
Everyone's just gonna call it. Yeah.
It had been a few years because my last time on any Mr. Freeze was admittedly in 2017, which is crazy because I did the Texas one in 16 and then wrote that a lot over 2 days, and then we did the one in St. Louis in 17, and of course the memories stick with you because how can it not? But then after 9 years, it was like, okay, well, I'm gonna love it as much as I loved it in the past, and perhaps Mr. Freeze lived on in my mind as like the ultimate coaster. I've just always loved Mr. Freeze. It's just quintessentially 90s. Lots of character, kind of like strange. And on one of those rides, you're like, okay, so who came up with this? Like, what was the thinking process? We're going to do a top hat overbank and then like stick a giant spike on top of the top hat. It's just like, you can who the hell thought this?
Looking at it, you can tell that this ride was designed for Six Flags St. Louis. The ride fits just perfectly like a puzzle piece inside of their River Rapids ride plot. So if you're wondering how they settled on this idea and the shape of this ride, it was 100% designed for Six Flags St. Louis. Six Flags Over Texas you can tell like it fits in most regards, in most aspects, but they had to make some accommodations for the mini mine train underneath it. You can tell that there's two, for a ride that's been cloned, there's two. There's one that is like, this is the park it was designed for, and the other one, it's like, this is the park that had to make adjustments to accommodate it.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's kind of funny to think that like there was a time in the 90s where Six Flags St. Louis was the kind of park that you would design a ride like this for, and not a park that just kind of got, what it got.
Now, admittedly, I did say a few moments ago that it wasn't as good as I necessarily remember, but it doesn't mean it's bad at all. It is still such an incredible ride. It runs so well for its age. To think that this thing is like my age is kind of creepy thought. And then that back spike where you can just feel the limbs, LSMs or LIMs. Which one is it again?
They're limbs.
For this one?
Old.
Limbs. So you can just feel the limbs almost struggling, like fighting for their life every ride cycle to push that train up and to give that extra drop a little boost. I am so fascinated with the ride design, and I do love it so much, and it does have so much character. And the top hat, and I do like the reverse blast aspect, because when you finish the ride, you like jump into that top hat going forwards and then, dropping out of it into that black tunnel when the ride's over. And I find that to be a better finale than doing it backwards. So long story short, I'm still a big fan, but in my head, maybe it lived on a little bit differently than it was. It's a good ride.
It's just so violent. Like, it is so intense. There's a lot of shaking.
I'm not disappointed. Yeah,
like, it's still that girl. I think it's still the best ride in the park, but like, oh my God, it's just really violent. Like, it just really throttles you around. The intensity, the speed for like the speed that you're traveling just almost feels like a little too fast for the way that the transitions and stuff are designed. If you're sitting in the last row, no, really the first row going backwards, the row that hits the bottom of the top hat first on that launch, it is blinding. It is so intense. You get just such an amazing head rush right from the start, especially because you go from being inside and you blast outside. Like, it is a sensory overload, this ride. And it always has been. I love riding this ride and being so impressed by it and so amazed by, like, it feels audacious. To this day, it still feels like an audacious ride. And then to think that, like, wow, they did this 30 years ago. Like, this ride had the audacity 30 years ago. This is why Premier Rides is one of the sturdiest, most reliable manufacturers of roller coasters, because they came out swinging. This is a ride that they designed it so early on in their tenure of ride designing, and they just hit the ground running. And they came out and built one of the most iconic, era-defining attractions of the 90s. And both rides, both of the Mr. Freeze coasters, remain the bar for their respective parks' coaster lineups. Like, both of these parks, I think, have spent a lot of their years trying to build a better ride than Mr. Freeze with, like, mixed results, because it's not a hot take to say that they're the best rides at their respective parks.
At the same time, I always do love it when a ride that is, at this point, old, like Freeze is not new, still gets to be, like, the icon, the star, the ride that people come for. I find that to be such an honorable thing for a ride like that. And there was only 2 of them built, and at the end of the day, I'm thinking to myself, I'm surprised it wasn't the next Batman clone, because Batmans are still the rides too that, like, pull the queues. Over Georgia, Batman will have a long line. I think it's good in America. It's still very popular.
They kind of were, in a way, because I think they were happy with the Mr. Freeze coasters, but not, like, thrilled with them, because they were so expensive to run and very maintenance heavy. And Batman and Robin the Chiller at Six Flags Great Adventure was a complete disaster. Like, for as much as Premier Rides will be remembered for building Flight of Fear and building Mr. Freeze and having these very successful rides that are still open, you can't forget that Chiller was them. They flew a little too close to the sun, found out too late that they can't duel these coasters because it takes too much electricity at the same time to launch both coasters at the same time with the ancient power grid draining linear induction motors. And so what was supposed to be like the super Batman Mr. Freeze coaster for Great Adventure ended up being a complete disaster and only lasted 10 years and had just constant problems from start to finish. And then I think because they did like another, like Premier Parks, after taking over the Six Flags parks, did another round of these LSM launch coasters, but instead of doing Mr. Freeze, they just did outdoor clones of Outer Limits Flight of Fear for Fiesta Texas and Six Flags America, respectively. So in a way, the product line, I mean, they built 6 roller coasters for Six Flags between 1996 and 1999, and they all opened between 97 and 99. So even though there was never more than 2 of the same layout built with Six Flags, it's not unlike the Batman level of interest and intrigue and success with a product. It was just that they had a couple different design layouts to choose from for fulfillment instead of just building the exact same ride every time.
It's true. Though I guess we can be appreciative of the fact that Circuit St. Louis does have a Batman and Mr. Freeze, because those two together are such little 90 powerhouses.
And like Six Flags Over Texas didn't get their Batman until 1999. In 1997, Six Flags St. Louis had 2 e-ticket DC Comics themed roller coasters, and there was only one other park in the chain that could say the same, which was Magic Mountain. There was a time where Six Flags St. Louis was really that girl. And in my heart, she still is. Is that when the park
peaks?
Yeah.
Like, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wait a second, they were actually leading in the chain for a little bit? Like,
Six Flags St. Louis getting a custom roller coaster, getting Mr. Freeze, that coaster, which was designed for that park, and getting it in 1997, just 2 years after getting their Batman clone. That was when Six Flags St. Louis was really at the top of her game. And then I think that continued into the 2000s with the Boss, getting the Boss in 2000. You know, I know people really wanted a hyper coaster for that park, and people to this day still talk about maybe getting a hypercoaster for Six Flags St. Louis. It's not going to happen ever, but we got the Boss, and I prefer the Boss over a majority of the hypercoasters that I've ridden, including the only hypercoaster in the state of Missouri, Mamba. So take that for what you will.
And then last but not least, I do want to mention a little bit about the overall feel of the park. So we've discussed a lot of it already kind of throughout the episode. I just do want to give a shout out to their impressive flat ride collection, because I feel like in a world of modern day Six Flags, even though I know of course just got acquired, Six Flags has been really kind of lame about the flat ride thing, and maybe because I love Magic Mountain so much, and Magic Mountain's flat ride game is absolutely shit. It's just weak. It's terrible. But then Six Flags St. Louis, it's doing a good job. They've got a lot of flat rides. I mean, Catwoman's Whip is a major big ride. They've got the Buccaneer that they rebranded from the previous Joker theme, and then of course now they've got the Joker Carnival of Chaos, Supergirl, Fireball, Sky Screamer, and this is like a nice healthy mix of flat rides, and I do like that because
classics too.
They've
really
got a
vintage carousel.
Energy.
They've got their Eli Bridge Scrambler Shazam, which has been there since 1971.
So true.
Yeah, they've got their one of the better Starflyer ride installations. For it being like a production model one that's not particularly tall, they put it in the right place up there in the highest part of the park in the top right corner there. It looks amazing. This is what happens when you have a park that, like, I swear in some ways, like, everybody wants to be Magic Mountain and be a park that gets a new roller coaster every 2 years. But when you're a park like Six Flags St. Louis, you have a pretty solid coaster lineup, and then your investments year over year end up being a lot of flat rides, which flesh out a park really nicely. And then, like, yeah, maybe you only have 10 roller coasters, but you have a park full of diverse attractions and a lot of variety of things. You have like a Zamperla Disco. You've got, there's all these different. There's more flat rides there than I'm even thinking of in this moment, because like they have so many. They've got the Mack rides, Tsunami Twister, water teacup ride. Like, they've got a really nice mix, and they're probably going to add more because that's an easy way to invest in a park early on when you have new owners. But they continue to trend up with their flat rides. And when they have an old flat ride that gets retired because it's at the end of its service life, they typically replace it with a new one in a reasonable amount of time. I think that's a great quality of this park. And something that hopefully will continue, because really, I think more than a coaster right now, they just need a flat ride, a nice signature flat ride to replace Excalibur, because that was the coolest flat ride the park ever had. If you're not familiar, Excalibur was a NASA Boosink, another Dutch manufacturer, evolution ride, which was a sort of looping pendulum frisbee type ride that the gondolas would swing. And it was, you just gotta, like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's hard to describe. You gotta Google it and look it up. Sean and I were lucky enough to ride this in 2017. Just a couple years before they ultimately called it quits. It's a miracle that it ran as long as it did, because it was a super expensive to operate and maintain flat ride. So good on St. Louis for keeping that plate in the air spinning as long as they could, because every year that ride ran was a miracle. Miracle.
That's hilarious.
Miracle.
Yeah. No, I will say that's one of my fondest memories of any flat ride in the world, is riding that and being there. And we rode it twice, I think, once during the day and once at night. And then at night, I would still remember, like, we're so high above the park, it's cold, and you're looking across to other riders in their little cages,
in their other little gondolas.
Oh man, it was the coolest thing, and like, it was such a fever dream almost to me. I have really, really visual like memories of riding that. Vivid. I forget shit so quick. I can talk about my favorite parks in China and be like, oh, that's right, they had that right there.
I don't remember why, but I love it.
But like, man, I remember that so vividly. It was like, maybe it was just like a trip, because like I had never really ridden anything like it, and you were so stoked about it. You talked about this ride before we even planned on going to this park. It was a kind of party personality, because in 2016 when we met, you had just gone. And so like, this is one of your little like personality traits. You were like, really,
it was my personality for a good year.
And so like, you were really talking about it. So then we finally went and rode it like a year and a half after we met, and it was like, I guess about a year after we officially met. Long story short, anyway. And it was like one of those things where like, yeah, like I had been looking forward to this ride among others. Like we rode Superman a bunch then too. Funny with the things that are gone now.
Ironic, the flat rides of yesteryear.
Yeah, fond memories of that. Same with Superman, because we rode Superman a couple times. Yeah, we rode both things. Yeah,
I loved the way their Superman, their Intamin second gen. I loved the way that park positioned the ride where it was located. It was such a great fit. It was one of many of Astroworld and Six Flags St. Louis's connections. These two parks were both kind of like the butt of the joke on and off for a long time. And for as long as both parks were in the same chain, which was like from the mid 70s when Six Flags acquired Astroworld until Astroworld closing in 2005, these parks had a lot of shared DNA. The Schwarzkopf looping star that Six Flags St. Louis built in 81 was sent to Astroworld in 1989. That was their Viper. The Intamin first gen freefall, the Sky Screamer from Astroworld, was, when it closed in 1997, they did send it to Six Flags St. Louis, but they never built it. It was scrapped. It was the second time that Six Flags St. Louis came really close to getting an Intamin first gen freefall and then did not get it. But then third time's the charm, when Astroworld closed, the second gen freefall that Astroworld had built, Dungeon Drop, was sent to St. Louis, and it was reassembled and opened as Superman Tower of Power. But yeah, that was a cool ride too. You're right. We did. There was a lot that we did on our 2017 trip to Six Flags St. Louis that is not really. They're not part of the equation anymore. Between those were like the only two flat rides we rode aside from a Ferris wheel, and they're no longer with us. All that to say, I look forward to seeing them repurpose the Excalibur plot with a worthy flat ride experience, something big, something tall, and like maybe something. I don't know what, but like if they put like a clone of like one of those Mondial, like the Tundra Twister at Canada's Wonderland, I wouldn't be mad. That's the kind of ride that I think of.
I will say this park loves their big swinging flat rides. I mean,
they love big pendulum swingers. Cool. Why not? Yeah, come on.
And that thing was popular because that was like it was dead at the park, right? But that thing had a line. In fact, we skipped it because it was like an hour line, and I kind of wanted to do it because I'd never done one of those big ones before, and now I kind of regret not doing it.
Yeah, the Catwoman ride was struggling. I mean, it'll probably still be there when we go back, but the park was dead, and it had like a half-hour wait because like the ride was really struggling operationally. Like some of the restraints were not working. Like it was a mess. So it wasn't really in the cards for us. Also because of the weather. Like if with the thunderstorms coming, we knew, and we just cut our losses. We had all the time in the world and didn't have like a 5 a.m. wake up call to drive to Chicago the next morning. Maybe we would have just stuck it out, but. We cut our losses when we needed to.
Yeah, didn't we do like really well? Didn't it start like pouring the moment we sat down in the car?
Yeah. We got to the car and it just started dumping, and like it was finished like our third ride on Mr. Freeze, and we were like, boom, let's go.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
That was awesome. So overall, things I'd like to see change in the park. Again, we kind of discussed it already, but I would like maybe a little more cohesion when it comes to the corner that Ninja Batman stuff's in. It's like the big hot mess movie area. I like some color there. I'd like it to be maybe a little bit more cohesive. Other than that, the park itself is kind of a really general theme, and it works and it's fine. It doesn't have to have themed lands, but I love your idea about making the World's Fair Park. I would love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you've gotten this note here, Americana theme. It's like you and I were on the same wavelength and didn't even realize it. But yeah, 1904.
Since you're going to call it Mid-America by Enchanted Parks, I feel like Americana is like the way to go.
Yeah.
And for parks, you know, I just feel like it works. Six Flags St. Louis is St. Louis in general is very Americana. You know, the westward expansion, it's like the hopeful, proud future. I find, if I think St. Louis and I think the Arch and I think the Expos, I think Americana. Yeah. And in a region that has Silver Dollar City, which is like classic 1800s, mining town Ozarks, whatever. And then you've got Worlds of Fun that really explores anything that's not necessarily Americana. They've got an Americana section, but doing a lot of the Africa stuff. I find like doing mid-century Americana for St. Louis will be the perfect thing, especially now that those two parks are on the same chain. That would be, I think, that should be a direction they should go in. It'd
be a great way for them to diversify the vibe of those two parks and sell them to Missouri and tell the Missouri population why you should be going to both parks every year. instead of just the one that's closest to you, basically. Oh, this is random, but we just hit 45,000 followers on Facebook. Yay! Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
To
Appreciate
our followers. We love you very much.
Speaking of Facebook, make sure to follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and wherever you're listening, give us 5 stars, please. So we do really appreciate it. Spotify, Apple Podcasts are the big ones we focus on. Also, please listen to all of our previous episodes. We have a lot already this season. I mean, I could barely keep up because we're doing so much. This is one of our busiest years.
I'm behind. I still need to listen to our 2 most recent China episodes.
We did like 30 China parks, and then we did an Iowa road trip. We did La Ronde. We did Air Force One. We are going to Texas.
This has
Oklahoma.
been the craziest July ever. I can never
Disney.
have a July this crazy again. It will kill me.
Yeah,
no regrets, but I can never do it like this again.
So much we already talked about and we've already launched, like the Missouri, Iowa parks and the Sickest Go to America. And then there's so much that's coming still. We're going to record about La Ronde. We're going to record maybe Minnesota about Air Force One. Rest in peace already. And then we're going to talk about our Texas parks we're going to do. And then we still have like 15 plus China parks to talk about. So there's so much going on. So the season will probably go on forever, even when the parks are closing.
Forever.
Because there's so much you still have to talk about. So next week, hopefully, we can knock out a La Ronde episode. I would love to talk about that. We had such a blast. We had such a good time at La Ronde. I cannot begin to start talking about that park.
I love Six Flags St. Louis, and I love La Ronde in a lot of the same ways.
So true.
I look forward to talking about it next week. The black top effect.
They really do kind of have similar vibes,
but they're both. La Ronde is the World's Fair park. Like, it was built 100%. As the World's Fair. So, like, for both parks having a World's Fair theme to them, they are very kindred spirits. Also, as like neglected Six Flags parks, so that are officially no longer neglected Six Flags parks that are no longer Six Flags owned and operated as of this year. So.
Yeah, they have like a signature feel to them that is honestly kind of similar. I would say, yeah, that's kind of funny you mentioned
Six Flags shabby chic aesthetic.
And shabby chic. I wouldn't even say chic.
Mostly shabby.
Shabby flags.
Shabby chic, but mostly shabby.
Yeah, that's so true, bestie. All right, guys, we're going to end the episode. We'll catch you guys next week for La Ronde. And we want to thank you for listening. And goodbye.